Hey friends, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I want to talk about something a little different. I want to talk about the whole trad wife phenomenon and how it paints a really unrealistic picture of what life as a stay-at-home mom actually looks like, and also how I feel like in a lot of ways the pressure to live up to that kind of lifestyle ends up leading to single mom life in many, many ways. At least I feel like it did in my case in a lot of ways. If you're new here, I'm Jen, single mom, artist, and entrepreneur, and this channel is all about building a life that you love and do it on your own. Now, I used to be married, obviously, or I wouldn't be a divorced single mom. During that marriage is when I started my first business, and that business ultimately failed. When it did, I was in a really bad place. In fact, the idea of going back to work was terrifying. I was so afraid of failing again. And so together with my husband at the time, I decided that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom and devote myself entirely to my family. Now at first, the simplicity of being home with my kids all day was actually kind of refreshing. The routine of cooking and cleaning and taking care of the kids had a bit of an initial charm. But eventually that wears off, and the lack of personal time, the need to be everything to everyone every minute of the day, and the lack of any kind of professional fulfillment really took its toll on me. At that time, none of my friends had small kids, so I felt extremely isolated. I felt caught in that never-ending cycle of chores and responsibility. My identity of who I was as a human and as a woman really started to fade into the background, and I felt like my entire identity became mom and wife. The lack of intellectual stimulation on a day-to-day basis was really hard for me. And on top of that, my workday never ended, because even when my husband got home from work, I was still cooking dinner, and I was still bathing kids, and I was still primarily the one to put them to bed because they wanted mom. Unlike my husband, who got to come home from work and play with the kids and screw around on the computer and do a lot of the things that he wanted to do. Now, that's not to say that he didn't do anything around the house, because he did. He would start a load of laundry or fold a load of laundry or unload the dishwasher occasionally. But the bulk of the parenting still fell on my shoulders. And I think that that's a default in a lot of marriages to begin with. On top of that, because he made the money, he controlled the finances, and I was kept on a really strict allowance. My weekly allowance paid for groceries, gas, and anything that the family wanted to do. There were many times that he made comments that made it very, very clear that he considered his income to be his money and not the family's money, even though we made a decision together that I was going to stay home. So obviously, if only one person is making money and the other person is taking care of the household, all the money coming in should be the family's money, right? My contributions to our daily living were kind of dismissed as being easy, and pretty soon I was pretty unhappy. And as time passed, I felt a lot of pressure to be the everything mom. So I learned how to cook from scratch. I learned how to can, I grew a giant garden, and I did all of these other things that I thought a traditional wife should do. And it was exhausting. As time passed, I decided that this was really not the lifestyle that I wanted. I yearned for personal growth, professional achievement, time to do the things that I was passionate about. I wanted to be more than just a wife and a mother. I wanted to be my own person again. I really missed that about life before kids, having an identity outside of my family. And I feel like that's important for most people. Most of us want an identity that is not connected to our husband or our kids. Don't get me wrong, it's not that they're not important. My kids are my whole world, even now. But I'm not just their mom. I'm so much more than just their mom. And I feel like even to them, it's a disservice to be seen as just their mom. It's a disservice to them for them to grow up thinking of me as just a mom, because I'm so much more than that. And they are so much more than just my kids. And I would never want them to be seen as just my kids for the same exact reasons. So I decided that it was time to make some changes, and they didn't go well. I decided it was time to start pursuing things that I was passionate about and interested in. I started making time to go out with friends and do things again, away from my children. And I spent time on self-care, and I was often chastised for it. I was told I was being selfish anytime I did something that was just for me. When I would go out with girlfriends, I would only be gone an hour before I started getting texts asking me when I was coming home. And that's not okay. That's not okay. I needed to have a life outside of the four walls of my home. My husband had a life outside of the four walls of our home. I needed that too. After 8 years of being a stay-at-home mom, I decided to go back to work part-time. I found a sense of identity again and a level of independence that I had really missed. Ultimately, I regained a lot of independence. And ultimately, that regained independence was kind of the beginning of the end of my marriage. I still carried the majority of the burden of the household responsibilities because my job was part-time. I scheduled it around my husband's job. So I still did all the childcare and most of the cooking and very much most of the cleaning. And so I found myself working full-time and part-time all at the same time. Despite that additional load of labor, I still made time to go spend time with my friends and to do the things that were important to me as an individual human. That really caused issues with my husband. He never maintained strong friendships as an adult. And so my strong friendships that I maintained, I really believe there was a level of jealousy there, honestly. I was his sole source of companionship. So when I sought companionship with other people, it didn't go well. I really believe that he found my independence threatening. And so he became more controlling and more critical of my every single move. Eventually, I got tired of never being enough, and I filed for divorce. Now, because I had spent 8 years out of the workforce, and I was only working part-time when I got divorced, my earning potential was seriously impacted. The divorce was pretty devastating financially. I had zero savings at all, and I chose not to go after his retirement, which I was fully entitled to because we had been married for over a decade. But to be honest, I just needed that divorce to be final as soon as possible because I was so incredibly unhappy and I needed to get it over with. So as far as I was concerned, it was just money and it really didn't matter that much. It has taken me nearly 10 years post-divorce to fully recover from the financial blow of getting divorced as a mom who'd been out of the workforce for 8 years and was only working part-time at the time of my divorce. It was a giant struggle, but I'm happier than I have ever been. And by extension, so are my kids. They struggled for a time, of course, but with good counseling and patience and hard work, we all got through it. Now, my trad wife experience was still a crucial part of who I am today because it really taught me what I valued about my life, what I really wanted in the world. And I think most importantly, it taught me that it was okay to choose a different path. So I did. It is okay not to fit into societal norms. It is okay to prioritize your own well-being and happiness. It is okay to be who you want to be. And I know that my experiences are not every woman's experience, but I also believe that it is far more common than not. So while the trad wife lifestyle may work for some, and if it works for you and it's your choice, I fully support that. I fully support women doing what they feel is best for them. And in fairness, I feel like my kids got a really great start in the world because I was home with them. I feel like the fact that I was home with my kids was a giant service to them, especially my son, because getting early intervention and early diagnosis for his autism is important. It's really, really important that you identify autism early on because the coping skills that you need as a neurodivergent human take a lifetime to learn. So there was a lot of really great things for my children that I was home with them as young children. and that I was there all the time, and that I was there to identify that things weren't always neurotypical, because that mattered. If you are a woman who really thinks that the trad wife lifestyle is something that you want, great. However, I would highly encourage you to make sure that you still get an education, make sure that you still keep up some skills for the workforce, because if the day ever comes that you decide you don't want this life anymore, you may find that your husband is not very supportive of the fact that that's not the life that you want anymore. Or you may find that he does what a lot of men do, and that is trades you in on a younger model at a certain point in time. And I don't want you to struggle the way I have struggled. I don't want you to have the burden of the last 10 years that I have had financially. It's been rough. I'm not going to lie about that. It's been really, really rough. We found a way, because that's what moms do, right? We find a way. Here's what I learned most from that part of my life. I will never again be completely dependent on another human being for my survival. I will never again be dependent on another human being for my emotional, financial, and physical survival. I will not do it. I will no longer allow someone to make me feel like I am less than to make themselves feel bigger. No, that's never happening. Ever again. I will never again allow my future to be in the hands of someone else, because no one else will protect my future the way I will, and the way that I deserve. Now, that doesn't mean I'll never fall in love again. I can't say I won't. I don't see it being super likely at this point, but it could happen. But if it does, I will have nothing less than a fully equal partnership, and everyone contributes equally. Because if it's not going to be 100% equal, I'm just not going to do it. So what do you think of the trad wife phenomenon? Do you think that these young women who are going into this lifestyle are going to find themselves as single moms down the road? I kind of do, honest to God. I know that I personally know 2 or 3 dozen women who were stay-at-home moms who are now divorced single moms. At least 2 dozen, maybe 3 or 4. So personally, I think that traditional lifestyle is just not really sustainable in the world that we live in. But maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? I'm just curious. Anyway, feel free to leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear what you have to say about the whole subject matter. And as always, thanks for joining me. See you soon.